You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Incoming transmission.
You're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
That is right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. It is Sunday, October the 7th, in the year of our Lord 2018. Justice Kavanaugh has been sworn in as an Associate Justice to the Supreme Court of the United States of America, and it's time for the HoloNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. Let's hit it.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
Oh yes, that is right. The new millennial conservative resistance does indeed begin right here, right now, with you. You're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network, and I'm your host, Matt Holloway, coming to you live from the parched, hellish wasteland of the Sonoran Desert in western Arizona. Actually, it's been raining like all hell around here, like the past 3-4 days. We've been getting a bunch of rain from Tropical Storm Rosa, which stormed her way across the Baja Peninsula, up the Baja Gulf, and somehow managed to smack straight into Yuma. So Arizona got some torrential downpours, torrential to us being like anything more than 4 inches, which our state infrastructure is much better prepared for now than it was in 2014. 2014, if you guys will remember, everybody saw cars floating down the freeway in Phoenix. I worked like 50 miles away at that point, and they called me and told me, yeah, sit this one out. So, hey, we all came out of it pretty good. The news made a great big deal of it. I had to kind of chuckle to myself. My dad, God love him, he actually called me, son, I heard there was some flooding. And, I had to walk from my house to my car in my Swampers, but that was pretty much it, Dad. Coming to you live from the west side of Phoenix, Arizona. Welcome to the HoloNet podcast. So we have a lot to talk about this week, and I know last week I did kind of tongue-in-cheek the Kavanaugh Free podcast. And by the way, I got slapped so hard with a copyright hit on YouTube that my jaw is still aching for using, what was that little song? I mean, I could play it again and I'll just get copyright slapped again, but it was like Wheel of Fortune. No, not Wheel of Fortune. Like The Price is Right, Bob Barker music. You know, it was the classic game show music. Oh God, what is it? I have it on here. Hang on. Think of the damn name of the thing. Yeah, I just called it the Kavanaugh. Oh, Little Spanish Flea. It was a little Spanish flea, a record star he thought he'd be. Watch, I just got copyright pop right there for just singing that like one bar of A Little Spanish Flea. So yes, if you do watch that on YouTube, make sure to check that out and skip every ad on there because not a one of them is going to give me any money. How much of a burn is that crap? Somebody lodges a false or phony complaint against you, completely ignoring the concept of fair use, and they get to put ads on your video and collect money. That's YouTube for you, kids. So earlier in the show, with permission of the band, in the lead-up online, people were watching on Facebook Live. Hi, Facebook Live! If you want to go ahead and throw me some love in the comments section, I see AJ Davis, my brother in Oregon, is watching. A couple of other people on there. You can join us on Facebook.com/HoloNet and tweet at the HoloNet. We're live on Twitter right now as well. Or catch the show later on YouTube, www.theholonet.com, theholonet.lanterns.buzz, of course, also on BitChute, and on YouTube, TuneIn, iTunes, iHeartRadio, all the places where great podcasts are found. So, now I've kind of prattled on without getting to any kind of a point at all.
Get on with
yeah,
it.
I know.
Yes, get over
All
it.
right. Jeez. Okay, so we come to it. Taking a look at all the news this week, it's all come down to how divided our country has become. Washington Post up on the big screen right now. If you're not following on Facebook Live, I'll throw all the links in the description. Rock bottom, Supreme Court fight reveals a country on the brink. President Trump on October 6th said he is 100% certain that Christine Blasey Ford named the wrong person in accusing Brett Kavanaugh of sexual assault. Story by Michael Shearer, Robert Costa, October 6th, 7:01 p.m. This is an interesting story. It basically lays out the division that our country is seeing now. Protesters chanting chug, chug, chug outside of Mitch McConnell's home. Let's see if we can get that on here.
Kavanaugh confirmation chug, 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 Kavanaugh confirmation chug.
Funny enough, shortly after, there was a couple of Kavanaugh confirmation chuggers. And if you're watching on Facebook Live, I actually did chug my HoloNet coffee while they were chanting chug, chug, chug. So conservatives across the country, you know, myself included, all kind of breathed a sigh of relief when we heard that Kavanaugh was confirmed. Some people whooped it up a little more than that. Some people were going out to the bars. I think a couple of members of the Arizona House and Republican caucus were hitting the bars last night. And you know what? That's great. That's fine. I have no problem with that. Celebrating when the right thing happens for the right person. Celebrating the fact that the Republican Party did not allow baseless allegations which could not be corroborated, allegations which could not be proven, to derail a man who, to all point and purpose, appears to be a great jurist and a great American and a great public servant. If you're hearing rumbling in the background, thunderstorm coming, just letting you know. So that's not me trying to be slick in post. And anybody watching live is like, why did he just look behind him? Yeah, we got thunderstorms rolling in from the north. So, hey, if I get cut off suddenly, you know why. But in the story, it says how Democrats are beleaguered by Trump's relentless combat, the White House's tight grip over the FBI probe of Forbes allegations, and fear that the institutional seams of the nation are fraying by the day as they try to rally their voters ahead of November. The real question of whether we can all move forward amid these cultural and human challenges and the raw partisanship, said Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, the damage will be enduring to the court and our country. Under the pressure of these divisions, no public official has been able to rise above the fray to chart a path forward toward greater national unity and mutual understanding. Moral outrage has been accepted as the basic currency of political debate. Opponents regularly attack each other's motives along with their positions, and honest reflection, when it cuts through the maw, is often dismissed as a sign of weakness or posturing. So, we've gotten to that point that I've called out many times, where we are no longer listening to each other. We no longer view the other side of the aisle as our countrymen. We view them as a group of people who are actively fighting against everything that is good and American. We have become so thoroughly divided, Democrat and Republican, conservative and liberal, that it may now be impossible to mend the wounds and keep the structure of the party intact. That's a frightening sentence to utter. It may now be impossible for us to mend the wounds of our country. So what do we do? What do we do? In November, a lot of people are saying that the Democrats have foiled themselves. That the left, through the chug, chug, chug chants, and also through this latest round of protests on the steps of the Supreme Court, we'll go to some audio from that, have revealed themselves to be too extreme and unhinged, and have likely cost themselves the election in November. Let's go to this audio now from CNN.
These are live images, folks, at the doors of the Supreme Court, where you can see protesters have gathered. They are demanding that their voices be heard as they anticipate the person who will be a new Supreme Court Justice, Judge Brett Kavanaugh, to be sworn in here any moment. In a bigger picture, you can see approximately how many people who have gathered there. It looks like there are dozens, and they are chanting, "Kavanaugh has got to go," is what I'm hearing them say. You see, there is high security there. As we look at these pictures, I want to bring in with me here Ariane DeVogue and Julie Pace. Ariane, when you look at these pictures, having covered the Supreme Court for so long, have you ever seen anything like this?
Well, I'll tell you this, you're usually not allowed on those stairs. You're not allowed up there. We did see the night he was nominated, there was a peaceful protest where people were allowed to stand and sit on those stairs, but we haven't seen anything like this. And why it's particularly interesting is we believe that he's going to be sworn in behind closed doors with Chief Justice John Roberts giving him one oath, Justice Kennedy delivering the other vote, which of course is so poignant because not only is he taking Justice Kennedy's seat, but it's his former boss. He clerked for him there. But this is very unusual. We don't see this kind of protests, the High Court.
We do know that.
So, a couple of questions here. If you're not allowed to be on the steps of the Supreme Court, why are they being allowed there? Why are they being allowed there? Typically, you're not allowed to protest directly on the steps of the Supreme Court. You can protest at the sidewalk, you can protest. So this means, at some level within the government, authorization was given for these protesters to be there, hey, ho, ho, actually physically banging on the door of the Supreme Court, which itself is a historic edifice. Sitting there just physically rapping on the door. When the hell did this start happening? When did this become a thing that you can do? Can I walk up to any other the branches of government? Can I walk up to the closed door of the Capitol of the United States of America and just start banging on the door? Hell, if I try that at the White House, I think I'll be sniped before I even get over the fence. I'll be arrested for getting onto the South Lawn before that ever happens. But no, they're right up at the door to the Supreme Court. Where's the security here? How easily could this crowd be penetrated by someone with malicious intent, and they are at the door of the Supreme Court? Who, what party, for political expedience, for the optics of this protest, allowed this to move forward? I smell some deep state, man. I smell some partisanship. This is why I say we've reached a point where reunification, culturally speaking, of the American people, such as we are today, October 7, 2018, may no longer be possible within our current partisan framework. The well has become so very poisoned that neither side can drink. It is impossible now for us to meet in the middle unless we break the framework. Unless we as millennials break politics. We'll explore that a little more when we come back from this first break. You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast here on the Lanterns Radio Network as the rain starts to fall here in Phoenix. We'll be right back. All right, you're listening to the HoloNet Podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. I'm your host, Matt Holloway. I am going to drop a little bit of wisdom on you today. We've made some big changes on the holonet.com, and you'll be able to find them right about down here in this region here, below all of our stories. And when you're reading a story on the holonet.com, boom, you've got our related products, which you can pick up. These are conservative tomes. These are the sources of our knowledge when it comes to the conservative movement here in the United States, and some of them are just good fun. You'll see here the Constitution of the State of Arizona. You can pick that up. Biopic on Ted Kennedy, Identity Crisis, the 2016 presidential campaign, Rules for Radicals Defeated, and Understanding the Arizona Constitution. Now, these are ads by Amazon. Full disclosure, when you purchase something off of Amazon.com on the HoloNet, that does go towards supporting our page, supporting our content. So please, make sure you check that out on the holonet.com. And now, here's the really cool part, our recommended reading list. Now, I posted this back on Facebook a while back, and here we have all the must-haves. The Constitution of the United States and the Federalist Papers, the Bible Promise Book, New World Translation of the Bible, and holy crap, Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, Jerry Doyle, Ann Coulter, Bill O'Reilly. There's a lot of Beck on here. I read a lot of his stuff. Dinesh D'Souza, Greg Gutfeld, and of course Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. If you want to pick up any of these recommended books, you can do that on the holonet.com/p/Matt's reading list, or just go to the holonet.com, click recommended reading. Finally, to take on a little tour here to the special offers section on the holonet.com. We have a free trial from Audible. You get 2 free audiobooks. You can start your free month of Amazon Prime Video. You can download free Kindle reading app and get $3 towards your ebooks, or start your free trial, your free 30-day trial of Amazon Prime. That's right, the HoloNet is now a member of the Amazon affiliate program. So please, if you want to check out any of those great services, go to holonet.com, click special offers, and get that today. That's on the holonet.com. Now back to the show.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
And we're back. You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm your host, Matt Holloway. On the blaze, Supreme Court Justices Kagan Sotomayor concerned about the court being viewed as politically divided. How did that just become a concern now? And it hasn't been previously? The Supreme Court has been politically divided for as long as I can freaking remember. I mean, there have always been your justices who leaned further to the left, further to the right. You know, it's usually 5-4. At least in my life, has been 5-4. You know, kind of liberal slant, more activist judges. And now things are swinging the other way. Of course, Justices Kagan and Sotomayor, widely regarded as being more leftist justices on the Supreme Court. Of course, now they're worried. Associate Justices of the Supreme Court, Elena Kagan and Sonia Sotomayor, said they are concerned about the court's legitimacy could be undermined if it is viewed as politically divided. This might be, coming up here, one of the dumbest sentences I have ever heard uttered from a Supreme Court justice. Either heard it or saw it in print. This is just world-class dumb, okay? Listen to this. We don't have an army. We don't have any money. The only way we get people to do what we say that they should do is because people respect us and respect our fairness. Kagan said in a NewJersey.com report. So, quick history lesson. And, I don't think I have to pull it up on the big screen because I think it's pretty straightforward. Brown versus Board of Education. The Supreme Court ruled that schools had to be desegregated by force if necessary. The executive branch is empowered to enforce the law. What did the President of the United States, if memory serves, I believe it was Lyndon Baines Johnson at the time, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, I'm sure you will anyway, wasn't it Dwight Eisenhower? Might have been Dwight Eisenhower. Sent in the 101st friggin' Airborne to enforce a Supreme Court ruling. That's right, Kagan, sweetie, Your Honor, Your Worshipfulness. You do have an army. It's called the United States Army. Their offices are located at the Pentagon, short drive from yours. What manner of absolute bat crap stupidity is this? How stupid does Elena Kagan believe the American people to be that for 1 second we don't all have the absolute certainty in knowledge that any judgment from the Supreme Court is enforceable by the full power of the federal government, which has one hell of an army, and the Justice Department, who has in their own right several armies of law enforcement officials at their disposal. The FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, which is a police force in its own right, following the Patriot Act, not to mention all of the state bureaus, state police officers, local municipal and sheriffs who are constitutionally bound to enforce a judgment of the Supreme Court of the United States as it is the highest law of the land. So what is this crap that Kagan is shoveling? We don't have an army. We don't have any money. The only way we get people to do what we say that they should do is because people respect us and respect our fairness. This is the same kind of bullshit. Caught myself there. Good thing, too, because I didn't have my finger on my live censor button. This is the kind of BS tactic that tells you that income taxes are voluntary. Voluntary, my fat! Where's my censor button? Okay, I'm gonna get ready for it this time, so I don't have to squelch it next time. Because every time I self-censor and I stop just short, I feel a little blood vessel right here in my temple just starting to let go. Okay. If income taxes are voluntary, then how come men with guns come to my door if I don't pay it? If you have no army, who enforced Brown versus the Board of Education? Who enforces any judgment in the United States? Any court level. Who enforces appellate rulings, circuit rulings, state supreme rulings, federal court rulings? Who? The armies of police and the billions of dollars which are spent every year on law enforcement, ma'am. Kagan said this in a NewJersey.com report. She goes on to say, part of the court's legitimacy depends on people not seeing the court in the way that people see the rest of governing structures in this country now. In other words, people thinking of the court as not politically divided in the same way, as not an extension of politics, but instead somehow above the fray, she also said. My God. Soak in that sentence for a minute. Just drink it in. Let it wash over you. You know, maybe put on some smooth jazz. I don't know. Do I have any smooth jazz on here? Let me see. Maybe we'll put on some nice background music. What have I got? Have I got anything good? No, all the stuff I listen to is too poppy, and I'll get slapped with a fine anyway. But I digress. See, this is why I need a producer. But it's a nice dream. It's a very nice dream. It's a nice conceit to believe that the Supreme Court is above the fray and is above partisan politics. The problem is it's not. The problem is it hasn't been in a very, very, very long time. There has been partisanship on the Supreme Court as early as the late 1700s. I believe it was supposed to be nonpartisan in the beginning, and that may have held for a little bit of time. Just a little bit of time. But that's not how it is today. That's not how it is today at all. The two Princeton graduates made their comments Friday during a She Roars women's conference at their alma mater. They avoided saying anything about the contentious atmosphere surrounding Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation to the Supreme Court. Sotomayor said the politicization of the court comes from politicians debating the interpretation of the Constitution. She said politicians have now superimposed that style on the court. That has hurt the court and may continue to do so. And they go on to basically shoot down the patriarchy and Kagan, to give you an idea of this lady's views. She said she remembers the pictures, because she became a dean at Princeton. I don't know if you know that. She said she remembers the pictures of the former deans, all of them male and white, that were displayed in her office when she arrived. And she said, the first thing I did was take that picture down. So, yeah, there's that. You know, you have portraits hanging in your office of all your predecessors and all the hard work they did. Think of like Harry Potter in Dumbledore's office, how there were portraits of all the previous headmasters of Hogwarts. Same idea, right? So the idea is that you celebrate the continuity of your office and the historical precedence of your office by having pictures up from the 1700s, 1800s. And they were all old men. They were all old white men. And Elena Kagan said, can't have that. And she took them down. That should give you an indication of what we're up against, folks, and why what we do here on the HoloNet and what we do in all the publications that we do. Not just the HoloNet here, but also Lanterns Buzz. There's some people on Mojo 50, some great people like Defenders of American Exceptionalism, The Blaze, Drudge Report, Breitbart, wherever you get your news. If you're a big YouTuber, you like listen to Sargon of Akkad or whatever you do, it's so important that we record our thoughts, our views, our opinions, our reality through common sense eyes, through the people's eyes. Because we're dealing with people who feel history, if it is inconvenient, is disposable. The first thing I did was take that picture down, she said. Kind of stunning for a Supreme Court justice who may very well rule someday on whether or not, say, Confederate statues can be taken down. little food for thought there. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to go a little bit further down the rabbit hole and take a look at the elections going into 2017. The latest RCP, RealClearPolitics.com polls are out, and they are a little concerning, so we'll talk about that. And we'll also dive into the concept of how millennials can and must break politics in the next 10 years. You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around.
Listening to the HoloNet Podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
And we're back. You're listening to the Holloway Podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. From Phoenix, this is Matt Holloway, your host. Thank you very much for joining us and for sticking with us through the second half of the show. Wanted to roll now to a new article, which got my attention. Came out on CNN from Hunter Schwartz. This is part of their cover line. And this came out just today. Millennials could be one of the biggest political forces in America today, if they wanted to. How millennials could kill politics as we know it, if they cared to. Boy, if this doesn't paint the millennial generation as just apathetic, I don't know what else does. Defined by Pew as those born between 1981 and 1996, defined by me as yo. Millennials make up 22% of the U.S. population, and at some point between November's midterms and the 2020 election, they're expected to surpass baby boomers as America's largest living generation. They're a massive voting bloc, capable of setting policy priorities and swinging elections. They're also grossly underrepresented in American politics. In Congress, there are currently only 8 millennials in the House and none in the Senate, according to Quorum, public affairs software company. And millennials vote at lower rates than older generations. In 2016, just more than half of eligible millennials voted. In 2014, less than a quarter. Our generation is at the beginning of becoming legislators in this country, said Stephen Olikara, founder of the nonpartisan group Millennial Action Project. Olikara believes millennials are capable of transforming politics. They're, quote, highly idealistic young people, he said, and their political rise coincides with our country's worsening polarization and political dysfunction. Millennials are drawn into politics over issues that affect them, like student debt, the economy, the environment, and healthcare, said Aaron Luce. Couture, founder of She Should Run, a nonpartisan group that helps women run for office. Millennials especially want to put their time towards something they know they can change, she said. She called millennials a sharing generation and said their comfort with social media would reshape politics, showing voters a different side of campaigning and lawmaking. It really flies in the face of conventional wisdom in politics, which is scripted, get it right, go back to the same few talking points. She said, now we have a generation who, not all but some, are tearing down those walls and saying, this is what it looks like to run for office. And I think that overall authenticity and transparency only stands to benefit in politics. So, I'm not going to read the whole story. Links down there in the comment section right there in the HoloNet, in the description rather, I should say. But let's think this through. Millennials are highly underrepresented in politics. Only 8 millennials in the House, 0 in the Senate, very few at the state level. Folks, there's just not enough of us running for office. We need to get on it. Now, what I'm going to say is going to be controversial, but it must be said. You don't run for office just because you believe your generation is underrepresented. You don't run for office just because you're Hispanic, just because you're a woman, just because you're black, just because you're Jewish, just because you're Muslim. These are not good reasons to run for office because my demographic isn't represented. That's a lousy reason to run for office. That's a racially or religiously or culturally motivated reason to run for office. It's divisive. The reason you should run for office is because whoever is in office presently, you believe in your heart and in your soul that you can do it better. Or you support someone who you believe can do it better. This organization that Couture mentioned here, She Should Run. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, getting more women involved in politics, but why limit yourself? Why should it be she should run to get more women into politics? Why should it be millennials should run for office? Why should we have that wrapped in our heads? If there's a Gen Xer in office who's working for you and they're doing a slamming job, they're doing a hell of a job, keep them there. If there's a boomer in office, but they're doing amazing work, they're upholding the Constitution, staunch in their values, their principles are in line with yours, they're doing all the right things, keep them there. You don't want to knock somebody out just to fulfill some demographic quota. It's stupid. It doesn't make a lick of damn sense. This is how, this is why, and this is where millennials can and should break politics. Because voting from our demographic pocket doesn't make sense anymore. It's antithetical to our best interests. I've got a friend of mine who I Facebook back and forth with. He's a straight up progressive. Lives in Washington. Okay? He posted something, Elizabeth Warren 2020, and I face planted into my keyboard. It hurt. But you know, he's a smart man. We just disagree. This article says that millennials are idealistic. That's a good thing. If anything, we should be more idealistic and less hyper-partisan. The previous framework of politics in the United States, the left-right dichotomy, the dialectic, is what is crippling us now. That is the source of our disunity. Right now it is our greatest weakness. We must dispense with the parties entirely. It was funny. I was commenting to Defenders of American Exceptionalism the other day. Actually, it was Jonathan Dunn. It was on Jonathan Dunn, Freedom's Disciple. He had a Facebook cast. And I mistyped. I meant to say principles over politics. But instead I said principles over parties. And originally it was a typo, but then I thought about it more and more. And it was completely accurate. Principles over parties. This is why, in the upcoming election for mayor of City of Phoenix, I told you and I told everybody else and posted on social media that I support Nicholas Sarwark, the Libertarian candidate. I was so thrilled. He went on a debate with AZ Central, who's the big newspaper, the big Gannett rag out here, and he smoked it. He crushed it. He just killed him. He was the only person on that stage who sounded like a serious candidate. You had the GOP's sweethearts on there. You had the Democrats. Kate Gallego, I think, is running for the Democrats. Nobody sounded serious but Nicholas. But Nicholas Sarwark. And you know, if Nicholas is willing to come back, I'd love to have him on the HoloNet podcast again. We interviewed him about a year back for our third-party problems series. I think we need to revisit third-party problems now that we're coming into the election in 2018. And I hope that we can lead people away from the trap again. We can lead people to look toward their own principles, not toward their parties. The Supreme Court is supposed to be nonpartisan. No, Sherlock. A lot of things are supposed to be nonpartisan. School districts are supposed to be nonpartisan. How's that work out in your town? Ha, not well, I would think. I look back at my hometown of Carteret, New Jersey. Right now, they are in one of the ugliest mayoral contests I've ever seen in my life. The Republican Party in that town has all but collapsed and reformed around some people who are not doing the name justice in my eyes. And a lot of the older conservative GOP stalwarts have actually lined up behind the Democrat. Why? Because there is no viable Republican Party there. And there are people that look at this as a tragedy. And I did at first too. But when I look at it and I say, you know, the mayor of that town's actually doing a pretty good job, I have to look back at my own principles of what I said earlier in the show. If there's somebody in that office and they have a D next to their name, but they are following your principles and they're doing a great job, and your opinions line up with theirs and your policies line up with theirs, what's to say it would be such a horrible thing to vote for a centrist Democrat or a centrist Republican if their policies are right and if they're doing all the right things? And if there is no better option. Because anymore, it's what's the other option? We have a gubernatorial election coming up here in Arizona. It's going to be Doug Ducey versus Garcia. I think David Garcia. People ask me, do you support Doug Ducey? Do you support Doug Ducey? I disagree with a lot with Doug Ducey. I also disagree with a whole heck of a lot from David Garcia. Honestly, I think Ducey is doing a decent enough job right now. Is he doing a great job? No. But something that's very important is in your primaries, you get to be picky. This is something that my grandpa taught me, I believe it was. In the primaries, you can be picky. And I think my father-in-law said this to me too. That's when you choose your guy. And you get to be real picky on your principles and your policies. And then when you get into the general election, well, that's when you got to line up. And that's when you got to vote for the party that's closest to your policies and your principles. And that seems to be the rub, isn't it? That we never get to a place where the party's candidate matches our principles and our policies. Now, if you were a hardcore Trump fan from the beginning, you didn't have this problem. If you're like me and a lot of other people who were maybe Cruz supporters or Rubio supporters or what have you, then you know what this problem feels like. Where at the primary, that's when you fight your hardest for your principles and for your policies and for your beliefs, your philosophies. And at that point, once the primary is closed and has completed, that's when you compromise and you say, okay, well, this is the person that my party has chosen. I don't agree with them on anything, on everything, but I'm going to throw my weight behind them because the alternative is horrible. American politics isn't easy. As I believe it was Michael Douglas said in The American President, you got to want it bad. Because it's going to fight you. As millennials, as Americans, in order to come back together, we have to step back from partisanship and focus on principle. Principles over parties. And if that means your principles lead you to another party, lead you to a third party, I think it's time for those parties to rise. I think it's time for millennials to rise. Because there are so many different flavors out there than just conservative versus liberal. And only 50%, I think it was 44% of millennials voted in 2016. It was just over half, just more than half of eligible millennials voted. 2014, less than a quarter voted. I think, for better or worse, the millennials have been energized. We're going to see higher than that here in 2018, hopefully even higher than that in 2020. And I think millennials are going to recognize that the work that President Trump has done has been beneficial to them and to the American people overall. And they're going to break with the DNC in a way that the DNC has not predicted. The way that your Alessandro Ocasio-Cortezes can't grasp. Because millennials are starting to wake up and realize what we have been told, what we have been taught, what we have been indoctrinated our whole lives is a lie. That the battle lines are not drawn as clearly as the media portrays. It is not hard right and hard left. It's so many shades of gray in the middle. And now, if they're to survive, the parties are going to have to fight for that middle. So I think CNN's got it wrong here. Millennials could kill politics as we know it if they cared to. Millennials are going to transform politics into something unrecognizable. They're not going to kill politics. We're not going to kill politics in the United States. But we might kill the parties. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. We could be seeing the twilight of the GOP and the DNC in our lifetime. And that is not a bad thing. So all the sources for today's podcast located down in the description. My initial assessment of what we would see today was wrong. I thought that the left would be violently protesting Kavanaugh, but it's been quiet. It's been quiet. What did pop up right away yesterday evening, impeach Kavanaugh, suddenly started trending on Twitter. I'm taking a look at a CBS News poll. Senate races, the GOP are up in Texas, Tennessee. The Democrats are up in Arizona and New Jersey. Ted Cruz is leading Robert O'Rourke, not going to call him by his street name there, 50% to 44%. In Arizona, Kyrsten Sinema, Democrat, is leading Representative Martha McSally, 47 to 44%. So that is within the margin of error. Marsha Blackburn is leading Phil Bradenson in Tennessee. And Bob Menendez is trouncing Bob Hugin in New Jersey for the Senate race. Now, it's very, very interesting here in Arizona. CBS News says, similar percentages of voters see Sinema and McSally each as honest and trustworthy. More think Sinema represents change, and more feel that McSally represents the status quo. More think Sinema would do a better job on health care, while McSally has the advantage on crime. I dare say this would look a little bit different, and the race would be a lot more interesting with Dr. Kelly Ward in the hot seat here. And you know, I look forward to still seeing that race someday. I'll come right out and say it right here on the HoloNet. I really do hope she runs again. A year from now, when John Kyle relinquishes the late Senator John McCain's seat as he plans. I hope we do see a return of Dr. Kelly Ward to the campaign stump and the trail here in Arizona. So on that note, it's been a very interesting weekend. We have a new Supreme Court Justice and Associate Justice in Justice Brett Kavanaugh. The court is politicized because the court has always been politicized. That's nothing new. Justice Kagan's twisted opinions notwithstanding. So let's celebrate the victory that a good man was put up to the Supreme Court. Let's be cautious because his opinions on the Fourth Amendment of the United States can be a bit troubling, to say the least, to anybody of a libertarian bent or a constitutionalist bent. But overall, let's take the win. You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast on the Lanterns Media Network from Phoenix, Arizona. Good night. God bless you. And God bless the United States of America.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.